So what the CSA will do is it'll force you into stuff that you've never had before, and you have to embrace that, and it's fun and it's adventurous.
And if you let it, how transforming participating in a CSA can be. You know, Americans have never paid less for food. On the other hand, Americans have never paid more for health care. Have a transformative effect on you and your family and how you relate to your food and to your health and to growing up. Is there a connection? I think there is.
I think he's enthusiastic about what he does, right? Local food therapy. I love food. I think it's the glue that holds a society together. He amened it. And it's been an incredible part of really culture. And I feel that for a large part in the US, we have thrown a lot of that away, but it's coming back. And it's coming back strong, and I absolutely love seeing it. I think we have some movements from the 1930s to thank that started it, the Weston Price Foundation, and there's others that were really labeled as being kind of weird. But they were a really good counterpunch to what was happening back then. We were starting to use the leftover chemicals from World War II, the explosives. We found out there was a lot of nitrogen that is in those explosives, and we had to do something with it, and we're pretty good at figuring out what to do with these things, and we found out that it made crops grow incredibly fast. So here was the first advent of artificial fertilizers, and the whole thing just exploded from there. How could we make more with less? And hence, since the first big study was in 1938. If you compare today's crop value, the value is less than 30% nutrient-wise than it was back then. And that is really depressing. So we have worked hard to try to counter that, and that's where the CSA, farmers market, and also, yes, your grocery store can come in handy. So it's this is one of the cornerstones of DBC. It really is. So we're going to talk a lot about the nutrients that are in vegetables and fruits. Okay, we're going to ignore the meats today. The vegetables and fruits is really the topic of discussion. And we're going to have a lot of fun with this. So what I'm going to do is have Greg first explain what a CSA is. He's going to go through the whole thing and what it means. And there's one thing, and I think you might touch on it also, the environmental impact. I think that's an absolutely critical responsibility that we have as well. Unfortunately, it's become a political football with polarizing sides on it, and it really shouldn't be. We are in this all together. We're on this earth. We are caretakers of this earth. And I think the CSA movement is an important part of that. So Greg runs the Blackbird Farm, okay? And he'll introduce you to what that means. Greg Dunn, before that, worked for Trillium Haven, which was really a unique operation. Mm-hmm. Here's this incredibly fertile farm. I love the soil in that place. Right? It's got that earthy black soil, very fertile. And it was right in the middle of with houses all around it. Yeah. And so really a lot of artistry occurred there, and that's where you really got a lot of your skill set and your love for farming, and you took off from there. So I'm going to give you the stage and just take it away. Questions, by the way, we're going to do at the end of the session. So take it away.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to be here to talk with you tonight about community-supported agriculture, or CSAs. I have, in one way or another, been involved with CSAs in West Michigan for over a decade. Like Dr. denBoer said, I started at Trillium Haven Farm, which was a farm out in Jenison, Michigan, an old muck farm, where the grandson of the original farmer was growing really good vegetables, and he developed this CSA model. It's right in Mount Lucas. We did a couple tours of duty there together, served on that farm. It's where I learned how to farm, learned the trade, and where I saw how enriching, how nourishing, and if you let it, how transforming participating in a CSA can be. I know those are large claims, but I'm very passionate about it. I think it can really have a transformative effect on you and your family in how you relate to your food and to your health and to the land. So I'm excited to talk about CSAs with you tonight. I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about what is a CSA. We're going to talk about how CSAs work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why I think you should join the CSA, some of the benefits that you can have from joining the CSA. So first of all, what is a CSA? And I just pulled a definition here off the internet. This is from the Fair Share CSA Coalition. This is an organization in Madison, Wisconsin. They do a lot of support with and organizing for CSAs in Wisconsin. And a lot of people around the nation look to them for guidance and for best practices. And so I thought, well, there's a good enough place to pull a definition from. And they call a CSA, this is how they describe it. Members of a CSA select a farm and pay for the full season in advance, which helps cover the initial annual costs of the farm operation. In return, members receive boxes of the farm's produce or products throughout the growing season and the satisfaction gained by reconnecting to the land and learning about local food production. All right, so it's, again, it's a CSA is where you find a farm, CSA farm that fits you. You pay in advance, usually in the late winter, early spring. That gives the farmer the startup capital he needs to purchase seeds and soil, rather than getting a loan and hoping he can repay it at the end of the season. And then throughout the growing season, which for Michigan, depending on the farm and where you're at and what their infrastructure is like, somewhere around the beginning of June, toward the end of October, once a week you receive a share of whatever is in season for that week. So starting off in early June with lots of greens, moving on into high summer where we'll have lots of the fruits, the tomatoes and the peppers, and then easing into fall with a lot of those big storage crops like cabbages, cold hardy things like Brussels sprouts and onions, and so many more. I think I grow over 100 different varieties of vegetables on our farm. It's easier to tell you what I don't grow than what I do grow. I don't grow okra and I don't grow corn, and that's about it. I grow about everything else. So that's what a CSA is. It started in around the middle of the 1980s. A couple farmers actually from Europe came to the northeastern United States and experimented with this model. And from there it spread around North America. And there's lots of them around. In West Michigan alone, there are probably, 8 to a dozen CSA farms in West Michigan now. Compared to 12 years ago when I started, there was only a couple. Trillium Haven Farm was one of the, wasn't the first, but it was one of the first. And it was certainly, I think, the largest one. They had over 500 shares that they were doing every week, which Lucas can tell you, and I can affirm, is madness to try and pull that off every week to feed over 500 families. But it was a lot of fun. Now, the model focuses mainly on connection, right? If I could describe CSAs in one word, it's connection. It's connecting eaters to farmers, right? And that's the heart of it, really, is that relationship. So much of what we experience now in the industrial food system is anonymous food, from anonymous growers sold in anonymous stores. You don't know where that food has come from. You don't know who grew it, the path it took to come to your plate. And for some people, that's fine. They're okay with that. There's some advantages to that. There's economies of scale that you can gain, so we can produce food really cheaply. Americans have never paid less for food. On the other hand, Americans have never paid more for health care, right? No. I'm right on that. Mm-hmm. Is there a connection? I think there is, right? Because eating is such an intimate part and involved with our health. It's so intimate, right? So, like the things that you eat, your body metabolizes it and turns it into your cells and your energy, and the food becomes you. So your farmer, me, I'm growing the stuff that makes the stuff that makes you, right? And that's, I would argue, a pretty intimate relationship. And maybe you might want to know a little bit about where your food is from and know a little bit about who grew it for you. And so that's what CSAs can provide, kind of that heart of connection. All right? Now, let's talk about how CSAs work. How does this work? How does this whole process work? And I'll describe what it works like on my farm, on Blackbird Farms. So what happens is, so right now, this time of year, I'm marketing, I'm trying to find CSA members, signing people up. I've actually already purchased my seed and my potting soil. I'm going to start in the greenhouse tomorrow. Tomorrow's my opening day, as it were. We're going to seed onions and leeks and shallots tomorrow. And then all throughout March and April and May, I'm growing things in the greenhouse and I'm preparing the soil and I'm enriching the soil. And I'm seeding out in the field and I'm transplanting. So that when we get to after that, that first week of June after Memorial Day, we begin to harvest. All right? And so then what a typical week will look like then throughout the season is that sometime earlier in the week, usually Monday evening, I'll do a field walk. I'll walk through the field and I'll see how things, well, I'm out in the field all the time. I know how things are going, but I'm going to see what's ready for that week. And I'll go through the fields and I say, okay, look, there's this lettuce. That looks great. We'll have lettuce in the share this week. And that kohlrabi is ready. Those cabbages maybe need another 2 weeks, but I can see that those tomatoes might be ready to harvest in 3 weeks. We're ready to harvest these scallions this week, right? And so then I put together a harvest list for that week. And then starting either Wednesday earlier on in the season, as the season progresses, we start even on Tuesday morning, we begin bringing in the harvest for that week, picking these things. And then Tuesday evening, I'll send out an email to our members. And I'll say, hey, how's it going, everybody? Here's what's going on the farm. Here's what things look like. Here's what I'm dealing with. Here's the decisions I'm facing. Here's our challenges. Here's our joys. Try and give you a sense of what it feels like to be on the farm, what it's like there to be at Blackbird Farms for that week. I'll give a heads up about what I think is going to be in the share that week. Okay, so I looked in the fields. We're going to have these few things in the share. Coming up, we can probably expect these things in the share. Here are some recipes that can use this food. Here's some explanation about what some of these weirdo vegetables are that you may not have heard of before, right? You're like, what is that? So I'll try and explain that to you, how to store it, how to prepare it, suggestions for use, right? And then on the day of the pickup, and we have 2 pickups. We have one on Wednesday evening here in Grand Rapids. It's at the Livingstones Academy, which is on Lion Street, kind of, I guess, east of Fuller, in that neighborhood, from 4:30 to 6:30. That's our pickup window. So Tuesday and Wednesday, me and the crew were harvesting, washing. Wednesday after lunch, we get out our boxes. Our shares in Grand Rapids are boxed primarily. And so we'll box up the shares and put together all this beautiful produce in these boxes, and we'll load them on the truck, and I'll drive like a madman into Grand Rapids to get there by 4:30, usually in the nick of time because we're just cranking to get everything in. And then you'll come to the pickup location, and I'll say, welcome. Try to greet you by name. Say, hey, Lucas, good to see you this week. How's it going? And give you your box. And then frequently with that box, we'll have additional choices. We'll have a table set up, and I'll have a chalkboard set up, and we'll have some crates out with these things. And I'll say, take this box, and then you can choose also, pick out 4 zucchini or summer squash, pick out 7 tomatoes, make a choice between parsley and basil. And you go through and you pick these things and you take them home. And then you cook from that throughout the week and enjoy this fresh, delicious produce. So that's how our CSA works. That's how a lot of CSA works. We do a very traditional 20 to 22 week CSA. It's kind of the standard. It's what I learned at Trillium. Other farmers, as this model has matured and as it's grown, different farmers are experimenting with different models. Some of them will give you kind of credits to use. And you can use them for whatever you like throughout the season. Some of them do all kinds of different models. They do different things. People trying to experiment and trying to refine and trying to make it fit for different kinds of folks. So we'll go throughout the season until first week of June until the end of October, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll wish you a happy season, a happy Thanksgiving, and then we'll set about putting the farm to bed for the winter time, and we'll begin dreaming of spring. So that's kind of the logistics of how that works. And we'll have time for questions at the end, and I can elaborate on any of this for you at the question time at the end. All right, so we talked about what community-supported agriculture is. We talked about how they work. Oh, I need to talk about a couple other things about how they work. And then talk about how belonging to a CSA, you're eating seasonally. That's kind of a new thought for folks. We're used to having everything available all the time. Strawberries in February, tomatoes in March, you know, green, cool lettuce in the heat of summer, right? Because the food system's really good at finding where these things grow throughout the season and finding ways to bring them to you and satisfy your demand. It's an advantage. Of course, the disadvantage is, you know, there's sort of all kinds of ecological consequences. There are consequences for the quality and the freshness of that food. But with the CSA, it's different. CSA, you're eating with the seasons. I can only provide to you what the West Michigan climate's going to give us. And that is surprising for people. Every year at farmers market, we go to a farmers market as well. Every year at farmers market, someone will come in. I'll go, at the end of May with the first green vegetables, and I'll always have someone come up and say, "Where are the tomatoes?" And I'll be like, "Well, they're still tiny plants in my greenhouse, and we're going to plant them next week, right? That's where they are." He says, "Oh, so you'll have them in a couple weeks then?" I'm like, we'll have them a few weeks later than that. Tomatoes typically, unless you're growing them in a greenhouse, tomatoes won't be ready until August, and people have forgotten that. So you're eating seasonally with the seasons, greens in the springs, those tomatoes in the summertime, cabbages in the fall. The other thing with the CSA, especially with our CSA and traditional models, one of the bywords, one of the principles of the CSA is sharing the risk, sharing the abundance. Farming is a risky business. I don't say that to complain, I say that just as a fact, and it's my job to kind of manage the risk and figure out the risk and deal with this and respond to it and try and bring in a harvest in spite of all of the things, the 72,000 things that can go wrong and that usually keep me awake at night this time of season as I'm getting ready to embark on another season's adventure, and I can think about, oh my gosh, what if it rains too much? What if it doesn't rain enough? What if it's too windy? What if? So farming can be risky. And one of the advantages for the farmer is to share that risk with their members, right? And so when you enter into this relationship with your farmer, you're also experiencing that risk. Now, usually, if the farmer's any good, and unless we have sort of a biblically catastrophic year, the risk is more about, within individual crops, right? The risk is not you'll get food or you won't get food. If the farmer's any good, you're going to get something. It just may not be what you would like, right? If we have a really cool summer, we won't have a great tomato harvest, but we may have a really great lettuce harvest. The lettuce may do really well throughout that season. The potatoes will do really well in a cool season. If it's a hot, dry summer, the potato harvest may just be garbage, but the summer squash and zucchini harvest may be abundant, right? So you share the risk and you also share the abundance. And I try and follow that. If we have a bumper crop of cucumbers, you're going to receive a bumper crop of cucumbers. Within reason. I realize that's, I don't want to give you, 48 cucumbers this week. What are you going to do with that? Start pickling a pickle factory? But so share the risk, share the abundance. All right, now why should you join a CSA? How much more time do I have?
You're doing good. You're doing great.
Give me throw something at me if I'm going too long. All right, so this is some things I want to mention just briefly and some things I want to talk about in depth that are more particular to our topic tonight about nutrition. But briefly, we talked about how joining a CSA allows you to know your farm and to know your farmer. We've talked about that already, why that's important, how I'm making the stuff that makes the stuff that makes you, and how that connection is really important. It's really important for me too, personally, to be able to grow for particular people and to see each week. It kind of gives me what keeps me moving, keeps me pushing through those days when everything's going sideways and the lettuce is full of bugs and the tomatoes are dying from some disease and just feels like the wheels are coming off and everything's on fire and equipment's breaking down and employees are flaking out and you want to burn the whole thing down and move to Mexico. And on those days, I can think about, I can't do that because Lucas is counting on me this week. I want to see him and I want to, provide Lucas and all the rest of our members with this great, delicious food. So that helps me through the low parts. It's important to me as well to have that connection with my eaters. It also allows you to support local agriculture. That might be important. It's an important value for you. Instead of supporting farmers in California or farmers down south or farmers wherever, you're supporting West Michigan agriculture, right? You're ensuring that, whatever else happens, there's 16 acres in Coopersville, they're going to continue to grow food for people for West Michigan, right? You're supporting that local agriculture, and you're supporting, almost always, you're supporting practices with most CSA farms, you're supporting practices that are not harmful to the environment, that are in fact benefiting the environment, right? So we're certified naturally grown, which is the same as, which are the same standards as certified organic, but with different certifying mechanisms. There are other CSA farms that are fully certified organic. There are farms in West Michigan that are certified biodynamic. There are farms that follow the practices but just haven't gone through the paperwork because it's not necessary for them and for their business model to pursue that, right? So a lot of these small sustainable CSA farms are doing things like looking to the soil health, right? They're not just viewing the soil as a medium in which to grow things and you provide adjunct nutrients to grow plants. They're actually feeding the soil, right? They're thinking about the soil food web. They're thinking about what nutrients and micronutrients we need to put in and making sure that we're taking care of the earthworms and the fungi and the nematodes and all the other things that are making that food soil web work and are providing nutrient-dense food for our members. All right, we're doing things like we're not spraying broad-spectrum insecticides that are killing off the pollinators. In fact, we may be growing pollinator strips, right? And we're growing a diversity of crops that are bringing about a diversity of insects and helping the pollinators and the beneficial insects. So by belonging to a CSA, you're supporting those more sustainable farming practices. All right, now, how does this relate to nutrition? What are some reasons for your health that you might want to join a CSA? And I think one of the first things in that category are the way that CSAs provide, at least on my CSA, I think provides vegetables of really unparalleled freshness and quality. And I'll stand by that all day long. I think we grow, and I think all of the CSA farms around here and small farmers grow really excellent produce. And it's really fresh too. I think that's another thing. So when you come to the CSA pickup and you get a head of lettuce in your CSA box from me, when the sun came up that morning, it was still in the ground, right? It was still growing, right? It's not even 12 hours, picked yet. You grow lettuce from California, right? So think about that, how that works. So you're buying lettuce at the grocery store now. Where did that come from? It's in maybe California or it's from Arizona, someplace that's semi-arid. They're irrigating the heck out of it with diminishing water supplies for one. And they have big field crews that come out and acres and acres and acres of just lettuce, just this one crop. And they're harvesting them all day long and putting them on trucks, right? And so then the trucks go to their processing facility and then it's washed and bagged from there for a little bit and then it's loaded into another truck, right? And then that truck drives across the country to not the grocery store but to a produce wholesaler, right? And then they unload the produce there and it sits on the dock for a little bit. And then the grocery store comes and buys the lettuce, and they load it on their truck, and then they drive it to their grocery store. Then they unload it on their dock, and it sits in their dock for a little bit, and it sits in their back room. And then somebody puts it out into the grocery store, and then a couple days later, you come along and buy it, right? I mean, how old is that lettuce by that point? Days for sure. A week maybe, right? It's been sitting out for a long time. I've gotten feedback from my members. They're astonished about how long their lettuce lasts. They'll come to me and say, wow, that lettuce you gave me 3 weeks ago is still good. And my first question is, why are you not eating your lettuce right away? Don't wait 3 weeks. Eat that lettuce. But on the other hand, it's also because it has that long shelf life because it is so fresh, right? And I think the quality is high too. We try really hard to have maybe not cosmetically perfect vegetables, but still really beautiful, fresh, delicious vegetables, and also nutrient-dense vegetables. This is important. We talked about how with conventional agriculture, certainly since World War II, like Dr. denBoer described, and the advent of all of these chemical inputs, right? The mindset of agriculture has been to look at the soil simply as a medium in which to grow plants, and you provide all of the nutrition artificially, and it's artificially generated nutrition, and it's usually based on just 3 nutrients. When you go to a garden center and you see a bag of fertilizer and it's got 3 numbers on it, right? 3 to 3, 7, 9, 8, 4, right? That's telling you the ratio of NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, right? Because at a certain point, agronomists identified those as the 3 important nutrients that plants need for growth. And it's not that they're wrong, right? And the reason it's done so widely is because it worked. But to compare plant nutrition with human nutrition, right? Summarizing plant nutrition with NPK would be tantamount to summarizing human nutrition into sugars, fats, and starches, right? Like that crude. That's how crude NPK is, right? And we know we need to know a whole lot more about human diet than just sugar, fats, and starches, right? We know that there are, well, then there are vitamins, right? All the vitamins that you get, A, B, C, D, L, B, Z, I'm not sure what they all are. But more than those nutrients, there are also micronutrients that we're discovering, and we're discovering more of them all the time, right? We're finding all of these different things in food that are important for human health. All of these things, before the advent of modern agriculture, were already provided in the plants, because the plants were growing in healthy live soil that had a diversity of nutrients in it. And they were drawing up that diversity of nutrients, and then folks were coming and harvesting this food and eating it and receiving that diversity of nutrients, right? You are what you eat, right? Also means you are what you eat eats. And if what you eat has a poor diet, you will have a poor diet. And an advantage of a CSA farm that follows sustainable practices and looks to soil health primarily is that they're going to provide, because I'm using things like pelletized chicken manure that brings something to the soil health party. I'm making compost and applying that. I'm using cover crops that I just grow for a benefit to the soil that I then mow off and incorporate that into the soil. I'm adding all sorts of different things into the soil. The soil has, I'm getting a soil test and I'm finding out which micronutrients were imbalanced in. I'm applying those in the spring, right? So the food I grow is going to have access to all those nutrients, which means that when you eat that food, you're going to have access to all those nutrients. So nutrient-dense food is an important part of belonging to a CSA. Also, belonging to a CSA provides you with whole foods, right? Whole foods. I don't know much about nutrition. I'm just a simple farmer. I see all of these diets, right? There's like the paleo diet and the keto diet, and there's other kind of diets, and this diet and that diet. Eat these 3 foods. Don't eat those 4 foods. Do this one weird trick, right? I mean, there's all of this. I don't know anything about that, but I am nearly certain that every nutritionist perhaps, is agreed that the Western industrial diet is bad. I think everybody agrees with that. Maybe not the Western industrial food producers, but like a lot of people look at Western processed food, we know that that's harming us, right? And it's harming us because we're not eating whole foods. We're not cooking for ourselves, right? We're outsourcing the job of cooking to the industrial food system. Again, it has some advantages. It's inexpensive, it's convenient, crack open a can of soup, put it in a pot, fire it up, you got a meal in 5 minutes. But the thing is, when we let the industrial food system cook for us, the system knows how to push our buttons. And I have 3 of them. You probably have the same 3. Sugar, salt, and fat, right? The 3 buttons. And the industrial food system is just going to push those 3 buttons, and they're going to cook that food with too much salt, and too much fat, and too much sugar, and our health is going to decline. And our health has declined. So a lot of people emphasize on cooking whole foods. We're avoiding the processed foods, and we're going back to just the pure tomato, unprocessed, cooking from that. Lettuce, cooking from potatoes, making things from scratch, cooking meals again. And belonging to a CSA is going to really challenge you, force you almost to cook from whole foods, because that's what you're going to receive in your box every week. Belonging to a CSA is also going to challenge you to eat more vegetables, almost assuredly. So I try and think about, how people ask, how big is a share? And I can actually share that with you in a little bit. How big is a share? The share is my best guess at maybe what a family of 4, a full share is what a family of 4 might want to cook with for a week. There are outliers. You know, we have one family, it's just 2 of them. They get a full share, they eat it down every week. I've had families of 6 get a small share and come back week after week saying, there's too many vegetables. I want to say, maybe you're not doing it right. But I don't, because I try and be kind. But the full share is what a family of 4 might want to eat for a week. Provided though that, so if I had a chalkboard, I would talk about one of the challenges is how we're accustomed to making our meals, right? So I draw a big circle and I'd probably slice it in half and I'd say on this half are probably carbohydrates. That's what I would do if I had any choice. I would put in like bad stuff. I'd put like white rice and potatoes, noodles and chips. Such good stuff. Anyway, probably half of our diet is that. And then probably another, what? 30–40% of that is some kind of cooked animal flesh, right? Big slab of meat there. And then there's maybe 10–20%, a little sliver, that's vegetables. It's probably one of 7 vegetables. It's probably beans, carrots, peas, potatoes, corn, tomatoes, or lettuce, right? It's one of those. If you continue to cook like that while you belong to a CSA, you're going to get in trouble really fast because you're going to get a whole bunch of vegetables flying at you and you're not going to eat them all just having 10% of your meal be vegetables, right? So you have to kind of rethink how you make meals. You have to make it maybe mostly vegetables. That's what a lot of people have been advocating for, you know, like eat mostly vegetables, have some meat, you know, have some carbs, sure, maybe more, you know, whole food carbs, brown rice, whole wheat bread, right? Have a nice slice of, and, you know, if you eat less meat, you can buy better quality meat, right? You can buy meat from farmers who took their animal welfare into consideration, who are growing animals out on pasture, taking good care of them, giving them a lot of really good days, one really bad day, you know, and then mostly vegetables, right? So you kind of got to think about, okay, I need to incorporate more vegetables in my diet, and belonging to a CSA is going to really compel you to do that. And it's going to compel you, it's going to challenge you, I should say, it's going to challenge you to eat a diversity of vegetables, right? Because we're eating seasonally, and I like to grow a whole wide range of things. One, because there's just such a beautiful diversity out there. There's just such amazing things. I grow things just because, you know, do I have to grow green beans that are purple? No, I could just grow all green beans, but man, those purple green beans are so cool. And red lettuce looks so beautiful, and that red kale looks so beautiful, and that purple fleshed potatoes I really like, and you know, so I grow a lot of different things because it's beautiful. Also, it's going to give you a greater diversity of nutrients. Also, it helps me hedge my bets, right? Because if I grew only tomatoes and we had a cool summer, I would be sunk. Similarly, if I grew only lettuce and we had a hot summer, I'd be sunk. So if I grow a whole bunch of different things and a whole bunch of different varieties, I'm going to hit growing conditions that are going to produce a good harvest for me, that are going to provide food for my members. Even having, I've noticed like 2 different varieties of cucumbers, right? I have one that grows really well. It's like a southern variety. It was bred in the South. It does really well. If we have a hot summer, it does well. I've got another one that was bred in the Pacific Northwest. If we have a cool summer, it does well. So I'm just trying to hedge my bets and trying to make sure we have an abundance of food. So you're going to receive a whole bunch of different things in your share, maybe things you've not heard of. Now, used to be people didn't know about kale. I think probably everybody knows about kale now. That's the big trendy vegetables. But how many here have eaten celeriac? 3 people. How many people have eaten purple green beans? No, a little bit more of those? Okay. Mm-hmm. Parsley roots? Yeah. Black Spanish radish. Oh yeah, see, I got y'all. So yeah, and I try not to throw a whole bunch of curveballs at my members. You know, I try and provide some standards, some staples, but I will try and like, hey, look, black Spanish radish. Good luck. No, I say, and here's black Spanish radish. Here's some recipes to eat with that. And it's really delicious, and you should try it. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But you should at least try it. So belonging to a CSA is just going to expose you to a whole different variety of vegetables. And we talked about this finally. It's going to challenge you to cook for yourself, right? You got to cook for yourself, you know, because other people cooking for you, they maybe don't have your best interests at heart. You know, they want to take your money for sure, but maybe they're not so concerned with your health, at least as concerned as you would be. And there's something too, and I know this is going to sound like a bunch of hippy-dippy baloney, but That's, that we talked about the intimacy of growing food and eating food and that connection, and just the importance of cooking with your family and your friends and your loved ones. That act of making a meal to nourish you, to nourish the ones you love, and to gather around a table, to say a prayer of thanks, to say a word of thanks, and to just enjoy each other's company. That is healthful too, like that connection, that relationship. All right. We'll have time for questions at the end.
We'll have time for questions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It's going to be important. This is awesome.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's...
Love it. Absolutely love it.
So now Dr. denBoer is going to talk some more about specifics of what do you do now? So we've got a CSA that goes June to October. What do you do the rest of the year? There are a few farms that do year-round CSAs. The farmers market now is open year-round. So we're going to talk a little bit about how can we feed ourselves with nutrient-dense food in the dead of Michigan winter.
Yep. Think he's enthusiastic about what he does? Right? It's great. Love it. So as you were talking about the humble potato, I was thinking my uncles in the Netherlands were all farmers. That's the background that I come from. And I so remember as a kid, always every week we'd visit our Oma Hans. He lived nearby, Uncle Hans, and he on his farm we did a lot of potatoes. We have clay soil there, and I remember him just digging, and I'd help him along just with a spade, and we'd get the potatoes out in big brown burlap sack, and we'd throw it out in the trunk, and that'd be it for the next 1 or 2 weeks. And I know for a fact of the conversations I had later on with him, no pesticides were used. He just did crop rotation. He did the proper spacing, the proper watering, and extremely healthy soil was that thick black soil. And those potatoes were just unbelievable. And then I read about how potatoes are grown here. And you pick up just your normal conventional potatoes. Yeah, it looks like potatoes. We're talking the grocery store now. But did you know that these potatoes, they've used so much pesticide, inorganic fertilizers, gassing right before harvest. They use the glycophosphates on them right before harvest, so that's Roundup, that these potatoes are now so toxic they get gathered in one central area before distribution, in an area about the size of a football field. It's this huge mound of potatoes with a barbed wire fence around it with big warning signs not to come close to it because these things have to off-gas for the next 2 weeks. No one's allowed there. That's what we eat. And so what a difference, right? And so this stuff is pretty important. What you mentioned it several times, what the CSA will do is it'll force you into stuff that you've never had before, and you have to embrace that, and it's fun and it's adventurous, and just the prepping of it is just a lot of giggles, and I want you to enjoy that. So let's talk a few things about the off season. This is where things get a little difficult. I was watching Lucas prep for a Mexican meal that we're going to do tomorrow. We were doing some prepping in advance, and one of the things he was taking pride in was doing the garlic. And the garlic, I believe, was grown right here in a little patch of land outside of DBC here. And so the garlic is still great. It was aromatic. So some of the stuff can actually be stored and used later. I know a lot of the onions that my sister and brother and niece grow in the Netherlands go far into the season. They have these big storage bins in a cooler area that gets distributed to all the stores in the Netherlands late into the season. So you have to keep thinking about how to eat in season, right? There's a lot of these tougher vegetables like the carrot that keeps a longer time, the beets, things like that. But there's only so much you can do. This is a modern society, and the grocery store is convenient, so you have to to get smart with that. And when the picking gets rough, what you do is you go to frozen vegetables. Yes, I said frozen, but it is a whole lot better than that whole journey from California all the way through here. These things are flash frozen on site. You can often buy organic vegetables, a mix, and when you flash freeze it on site, you're locking in about 75% of the nutrients. That's a whole lot better than all the long distance wilty stuff that you get. I get a little depressed sometimes going to the produce aisle and looking for a lettuce, and you lift it up and the whole thing just kind of goes over this way. It's almost ridiculous. And no, I refuse to buy that. There's no nutrient value in it. It grosses me out, honestly. So I like to visit the frozen section and make that work. Sometimes some of the produce looks good, so just for funsies I'll buy it, but I'm always buying it with suspicion. So you also have your different stores that are good at it. Even a place like Costco, even though I feel like they've ruined some of our farmers, they might have, smaller farmers that is, they might have things that are organic, like wild frozen blueberries. Okay, these are really nutrient dense. I love buying something like that. Some of their avocados could be really good. So there's things that you can do. Trader Joe's does a phenomenal job also with the frozen vegetables. They have these small bags, so you're not stuck with these big bags, and very individually sized portions, and you can do a pretty good job there. Okay, but we're here to talk more about CSA. And the number one thing that I really want to talk about is which of these veggies are the most nutrient dense. Now this can be somewhat misleading, because nutrient density we can measure, but we cannot measure things like how good does it feed your, how well does it feed your microbiome, the good bacteria? How much does it alkalize you? How easy is it to break down? What are some of the properties that make it act like a prebiotic? Right? So those are things that we have a hard time measuring, but we can measure vitamin quantity, mineral quantity, and that's what this list is going off of. So there's also one other thing I want to take a note of. We are dying of hunger for nutrients in this country. Every year, the last bunch of years, lifespan is going down. We're not dying of calorie deprivation. We're dying of nutrient deficiencies. Overcaloried, not enough nutrients. So what we have to do is really look at food that we eat and ask ourselves the question, what is this food going to do for me? How nutrient dense is it? And what disease is going to be preventing for me? So, number one on the list, a round of applause for spinach. It is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. And fortunately for us, if you buy this one fresh year-round, organic, I don't mind, because it ships relatively well. It's relatively tough. It's rich in iron and phytonutrients, and get this, 1 cup that's cooked equals more than 14,000 units of vitamin A. Ever look on your vitamin bottle? It'll say there's an FDA warning. If your vitamin exceeds 10,000 units of vitamin A, it's considered toxic. This is 14,000. Okay? The FDA has it totally wrong because they were measuring toxicity of a synthetic vitamin A. That's why we have that toxicity warning. If you're pregnant, don't exceed this. This stuff is incredible. Vitamin A is so deficient in our society. It's what feeds the mucus lining of your gut. Your vitamin A feeds your liver function. Vitamin A is incredible what it does. Therefore, spinach is on top of the list. It's also rich in vitamin K's, folate, magnesium, iron, calcium, etc. And it's only 41 calories for all that. 41 calories, folks. You could eat a lot of veggies, feel satisfied, and get a ton of nutrients. Every breakfast, you'll see it on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll post pictures of Eat What Doc's eating, and that's just a nutrient-rich breakfast. And this morning, was Brussels sprouts, eggs, kind of in a hash, and then I had a little handful of blueberries and blackberries. Yes, they're out season, but there's all kinds of color, and the denseness of those nutrients are incredible. Imagine if I had Cheerios and some milk. Way more calories, no nutrients, and I can guarantee you by 9:30 I'd be greeting you with a yawn. Not cool. Yeah. You want a doctor who has a bright brain, thus we eat this kind of food. Spinach is also really good through a smoothie, right? It's a really easy thing to do. The way to prep it, make sure you prep it right. Quick boil for 1 minute. You don't need to do it longer, because if you do it longer, you end up with mush that's bitter, and you've just lost a lot of your nutrients. It's good for the heart, brain, vision. Number 2 on the list is Swiss chard. Okay, renowned for its health-promoting properties since the time of ancient Greeks and Romans. It's got a fascinating history. It's a beautiful plant. And again, it's got a concentrated source of carotenoids, flavonoids, antioxidants, and it's only 35 cups, or 35 calories. Okay, you will destroy it if you steam or cook it with oil, so boil this one, about 3 minutes. So Swiss chard is an alkalizer for your digestive health. Because it's alkaline, it's also very good for the fight against cancer, and because of its nutrients, it's loaded with calcium. It's good for bone health. So very popular in the Mediterranean. As you can see in Italy, they serve with olive oil and tomatoes, and Greece do leek and dill. Spain, olive oil, garlic, pine nuts, and raisins. It's almost a dessert, really. And in Lebanon, it's served with hummus, so you're using the stems for dipping it. Romaine lettuce, shockingly, is very high in nutrients also, because we always look at lettuce a little bit with, you know, this is good, it's good fiber, but really there's not much nutrients in it. But romaine lettuce, wow, it is loaded, and thus it's number 3 that I cover. Its cultivation goes back to 4500 BC. We have inscriptions of this on the Egyptian pyramids. Okay, so this is one of the oldest crops that we know. It's an excellent source of healthy folate and chromium for blood sugar levels. Chromium is what we use here as a nutraceutical for combating diabetes, pre-diabetes, adult onset diabetes. It works incredibly well. So romaine lettuce is great for sugar issues. And in 2 cups, you're only getting 16 calories. Kale, that's the one that just recently became popular, in the last 5 years really. And it's really a descendant of wild cabbage, and it's from Asia Minor. And brought to Europe in 600 BC by Celtic wanderers. I grew up on kale when I was little, way back in the 60s. A very traditional, Dutch traditional meal was to do kale. You chop it up, you throw it through potatoes, peels included, and then you had your, it's almost kind of like a semi-bratwurst, which is really common in it's so delicious, in northwestern and northeastern Europe. And you kind of make it together. Some people will put mayonnaise through that, lots of butter. It sounds unhealthy, but you know what? It's real food. And it's very nourishing in the winter. And yeah, it's what I grew up on. So kale is, there's one thing you have to know about kale. This one must be organic. Kale tends to be a magnet for toxins. So if you spray kale, it'll go right into the leaf. Part of its good properties, it promotes sulforaphane for liver support. It's a detoxifying plant. So unfortunately, it just latches onto things. So if it's not organic, you're eating some pretty toxic stuff. It's got to be organic, naturally grown. Yeah, and the vitamin A in there is great for intestinal eye function. You steam this one for about 5 minutes. The stems are really not edible. They're kind of woody. So make sure you strip the stems off of it. So I could go on, and I will bore you to tears with this, but making the list is tomatoes. The lycopene that's in there is phenomenal for prostate issues. It's very anti-cancerous. Brussels sprouts is probably one of the best prebiotic vegetables out there. Not very popular in the US, unfortunately, and it should be. It keeps well, it preps well. The key to prepping it is to not overcook it, because that will make it bitter. And it's really a big turnoff. It's the favorite way to make this in the denBoer household is to basically split them in half, and on a flat griddle, get some avocado oil going because that has a higher smoke point, and you put garlic in with it and salt, and you just brown them a little bit. So they're a little bit crunchy, but yet all the nutrients are still left in it, and it's absolutely delicious. So that's one way to do it. The worst thing you can do with them is put them in a pot of boiling water and just cook them to mush. They'll turn a light green, and it's like, ugh, it's so bad. So Brussels sprouts is a great prebiotic. It's loaded with nutrients as well. Green beans, pretty popular with most people. You want to keep them crunchy. Bell peppers, lots of wild colors that you can have them in. Dresses up any food, and when you are creating a rainbow style diet where there's all these different colors, you actually don't need proteins. When you have 3 or more colors in your vegetable dish, you are making proteins from that. There's enough amino acids to hook up, and you can actually be protein rich just with that. Cauliflower, there's something really interesting you need to know about cauliflower. It's really rich in vitamin K and some of the carotenoids. It's one of the few colorless vegetables out there that actually is loaded with nutrients, because color usually is associated with nutrients. But oddly enough, you have to chop it up and then make it. Have it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, and the nutrients become more dense. There's some enzymatic activity that occurs. It becomes more accessible and absorbable for the body. So cauliflower should sit there cut for a little while before you do what you need to do with it. Cremini mushrooms. So the portobello mushrooms is actually just an overgrown cremini mushroom, just so you know. The button mushrooms are the same family. One of the most nutrient-rich vegetables, I guess you'd call it. It's a fungi, really. That promotes phenomenal support for the immune system. I can't think of a vegetable that is better for the immune system than this one, and is very nutrient rich. Onions and shallots, my family would be very disappointed with me if I didn't put that on there, because that's what we grow and export and import. And onions, when you look at the actual nutrient density, isn't nearly as high as, say, kale. However, it's got some very unique properties that creates a slipperiness in the blood, so it prevents clotting, heart attacks, and strokes. It's a very powerful antioxidant for blood vessel wall, so it's great for heart health. It's very anti-cancerous, immune stimulating. Onions and shallots are fun to put in food because it gives you that extra pungent flavor, and I can't say enough about it. I even use an onion to clean my grill. So if you have some things on the grill that is blackened, you just take a half an onion, and while it's still warm, you just scrape it up and down, and it disinfects, it cleans really effectively, and gives a great flavor for the next time you grill. How easy is that, right? So, asparagus, so popular. Asparagus is great for detoxifying. Those of us that complain that it makes your urine smell, that's a genetic thing. Don't worry about it. It doesn't do any harm. It does mean that toxicity is definitely coming out, though. Asparagus is great for liver function. Broccoli, likewise, is one of the more powerful antioxidants for the liver, as well as kidney function. And I saw a very interesting study that showed that just deep fried French fries, which is not exactly health producing, a good serving of French fries with just a tiny little bit of broccoli got rid of most of the negative effects of the French fries. Isn't that phenomenal? So, no, don't go out there and do this, okay? But it still shows you the power of the vegetable. It's unbelievable how you can do something really bad and kind of offset it. Blueberries. Everybody should be eating blueberries because it is what combats cognitive decline. It is, there's a lot of studies behind blueberries. If you go with the wild mountain blueberries that I mentioned that you can buy frozen, the nutrient density is 4-fold, which is a lot. They're smaller, about a half the size, and they're kind of tart. Blueberries are just so healthy. That's that deep, dense color. Same thing with blackberries. We have some very convincing studies that show just a handful of blackberries a day reduces colon cancer risk by 40%. So it works very well intestinally. Blackberries are a potent antioxidant. And don't forget apples. We are in Michigan, folks, and apples must be eaten with the peel. 60% of the benefit of the apple is actually in peel. Greg mentioned the appearance thing. If an apple looks really perfect, don't eat it. You want some imperfections. You want a fruit that has had to battle a little bit on its own against nature. And that's what creates that nutrient density. Yeah, something that's just rich, a vegetable that's lived, or a fruit that's lived the rich, lazy life, and was supported, and we had chemicals do the work for them. They don't have any nutrient density. And so you want something that looks a little bit scarred and beaten up, and they are more delicious, and that's what I would go for. So a baked apple. If I have a digestive patient that comes to me and they are just really having a tough time restoring their microbiome, there's irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, all these people, what I have them do at night is have a piece, like half a baked apple or even a full baked apple. Why do I do that? Because the apple, the pectin, the fiber, it binds to the sugar, so there's a real slow, even sugar release all night long, along with the pectin, and it feeds your microbiome slowly so it can restore your gut flora. And also the even sugar release all night long feeds the brain, which has a real settling effect. So there's no ups and downs sugar-wise. Because in our overstressed society, what's happening, the adrenals are so janky that it's yanking our sugar levels up and down through the night, and that's what wakes you up at 3 o'clock. So if you're waking up at 3 o'clock every night, it's due to nocturnal hypoglycemia, which really is just a fancy word for low blood sugar levels, which is due to stressed adrenals, and you can combat that with the baked apple. A regular apple will not do it. Applesauce doesn't do it. It's got to be baked. So if you do it, just make 6 at a time. That way you're not baking every night.
How long do you bake?
It's about 400 degrees, about an hour. Stick a fork in it. 350 degrees, yeah. So then there's the time to cheat. So if you take a peek at what I am doing right in my little break that I forge for myself mid-morning, because I don't want to go too long from breakfast to lunch. And there's patients waiting, and I have to sneak quickly away, and I don't have time to chop up an apple and do this and that and that. Shame on me, but it is what it is at times. I'll use phytoganics. And phytoganics is made from all organic raw vegetables and fruits, and we throw them together, and 1 scoop is equivalent of 7 to 8 pounds of vegetables. So you put that in some water. Is it as good as doing the real thing? No, but it's one easy way to get a lot of nutraceuticals in you, a lot of phytonutrients in you, a lot of antioxidants in you, and it just lights up your brain within minutes, energy-wise. It's really a phenomenal product. I sometimes throw it in a smoothie as well. And speaking of prep time, that is one of the biggest impediments that people tell me about eating well. And I think the attitude has to be changed about it. I so celebrate our weekends by the fact that I can pick up all this fresh produce that's been produced by love. And yes, good farming methods. And just bringing it and throw it in the kitchen and line it all up. And sometimes if you look at Facebook, you'll see me, oh, there's another denBoer picture of all the produce he picked up on the weekend. But I just can't get enough of it because it's just phenomenal, the variety of colors, and it's just pure joy. And then we just, as a family, divvy out the work. So you chop that up, you do this, you do that. It's family time, it's giggles. So instead of, oh, I got to do all the chopping again, I don't have time for that. No, it's just, it's something that you have fun with, and it's together time. And it's really what is the glue that binds you together. And then what you can do is you put it in bags or glass containers, right, ready to go. It's washed and it's ready for when it's game on in the week. Because yes, time is somewhat precious, but if you're smart, it's so easy because once you have these things prepped, you've got a wok, right? You can saute it, you can steam it, you can boil it. It's very minimal time when everything's prepped ahead of time, and it can all be just one big joyful experience, and I mean that. When you come home late at night, you've put in a long day, then it's not quite as joyful to chop things up, honestly. So I think planning ahead, prepping ahead is really, really critical to eating well. And then one final note, I sometimes also run into the encounter, well, I can't afford to eat that way. Well, vegetables are really, really inexpensive. Loaded with nutrients, as I was demonstrated. It's that 12-ounce ribeye that's super expensive and hard on the environment. Folks, that's luxury food. That's not daily food. So become more vegetable-based. Animal proteins, if you have them, are a side dish, an accompaniment, not the main dish. The very first barbecue that I went to was a church barbecue, and I had, my family was just I had just a few of my kids at that point, and they were little, and we were trucking along. Oh, I was excited. This is something American. They do barbecues here, and what is that? And so we come to this, and I still remember the moment. This big plate was given to me, and then kaboom, huge slab of meat. It was incredible. So I, okay, and I started cutting it up into 6 pieces for my family. And they said, "What are you doing?" I says, "I'm just divvying it up." And they said, "No, that piece is for you." And that was my first experience with the American barbecue. That's not the way it should be, folks. And so let's become more vegetable based. And really eating really cheaply. So we're talking McDonald's. It's pretty, and other places like that. It's pretty hard to compete against them, right? $1 breakfast and all that. But really, it is really, really expensive. Just think of the cost, healthcare-wise, down the line. The economic costs of people having to quit early. I can go on and on and on. And the amount of money we have to spend on disease management and symptom management, it's not even healthcare, it's just management, is growing so out of control that it's part of political debate pretty much every week. And I see it with sadness because the solution is so simple. It is just so simple. So let's go for it. I would like to give Greg a hand in doing the work for what we do. And I so appreciate you working with nature and giving us the things that we need.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes?
With all those different vegetables that you were talking about, you did say something about recipes. What do you provide? I mean, like, yeah.
We do a couple things. One, I've got a cookbook that I'd like to recommend to people. It's from this Fair Share CSA Coalition, and they've put together a nice cookbook based around the CSA model, that takes into the account that you're getting this box of, to you, random vegetables every week. How do you go about making a meal for that? And so it has lots of nice adaptable recipes. It kind of has master recipes that say you could use this, or you could this, or this, or that, or these things, and these things go together. You kind of have to learn a little bit of culinary improvisation, and that cookbook helps a lot. And that has some more standard recipes in it. It's organized by kind of vegetable. So if you have, I've got greens I need to use this week, what are my recipes for greens I have? And so that's a good cookbook. It's called Farm Fresh and Fast. You can get it from the Fair Share CSA Coalition. I think they have it on Amazon. I sell it to my members. And then in our newsletter each week, I make sure to have a recipe of the week or 2 of the week, especially if you have something that I think might be unique to folks, like black Spanish radishes or whatever. Or if something appears for the first time, I'll say, okay, you have kale this week. Here's a great recipe that you can use kale with to start off with, and so I'll provide recipes every week. And just some basic classic recipes that you can substitute in and out different greens for or whatever. So that's part of the support that we provide. And then plus I'm at every pickup, and so if you get something you're like, what the heck is this? What do I do with this? And I can help you out with that as well. So yeah.
How do you become a shareholder, and is there a way to do it with a household of one?
Yeah. What you can do, I actually have sign-up forms I brought with me. If you're interested in our CSA, we'd love to have you join us. How you join usually is you fill out a form, you send in a deposit. At a certain point, you're going to have to send in the rest of the balance. Depends on the farm. So what we'll do is we have a sign-up form on paper, online, as a PDF that you can sign up with, send in a deposit before the season starts, send in the balance. Yeah, and that's how you join.
How do you make it work for a family of one?
Work
if
for
if you don't need a full share?
Family of one. Well, so we do full shares for families of 4. Or, we also do small shares, which are about half that. So that would be ideally for a household of 2, but if you're one person, you can eat more vegetables. You can also, there's a lot of these things you can also begin to preserve for the off season. We don't build the share around something, for putting up food for the wintertime. We try and provide you what you might need for the week. But if you have an abundance of stuff, kale freezes really well. And you can, we try to provide you with information for that as well. So you can find ways to freeze these things. There are some things like potatoes and garlic and onions and shallots and winter squash that'll keep for a long period anyway. You don't need to eat those right away every week. Some things, lettuce, you got to eat that right away, but that's relatively easy. Salads are easy, I think, especially if you do the prep time ahead of time. That was a suggestion that we give our members, is that you get your share, you come home, don't just stuff the box in the fridge, because you'll forget about it. But open up the box, unpack things, do your prep. Chop up the lettuce, clean things off, store it in containers, and have it ready to go for your meal prep throughout the week. It really helps just to take an hour or so to unpack it and process things that way. So.
Do you do fruits as well, or just vegetables?
Well, technically the tomatoes are fruit.
Yeah.
Is every farmer says that. We do. I've finally got melons to work on our farm. I was really excited about that. So we had melons last year. I'm going to plant some raspberry bushes this year. But it seems that, except for in a few cases, like fruit production is a whole other thing. Like vegetable production, it's kind of its own set of skills and tools and infrastructure. And then you sort of switch over and try and do fruit. It's like, man, it's a whole other thing. So I'm trying to build that over time. But most CSAs are only vegetables. Back here.
I didn't quite catch what you said about your farm. It's not organic, you said?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, so
what's the difference between organic and your farm?
Sure, that's a great question. So to be organic, to be able to call yourself legally in America organic, you have to be certified organic. The United States Department of Agriculture establishes the standards. They outsource the inspection to the inspection agencies around the country. If you want to become certified organic, you need to follow the procedures, you need to file the documentation, you need to do all the requisite forms and formats and paperwork and whatnot. And then you have an inspector come on the farm, goes through all this paperwork, goes to the farm, makes sure that you're adhering to the practices, and then will approve you, and then you can call yourself legally organic. I can't say that I'm organic. I probably shouldn't even say the word, because the USDA can come down on you pretty hard if you're playing fast and loose with that term, because it is a legal definition. In terms of what that qualifies, what that means is that for the standards, anything naturally derived is permitted unless it is explicitly prohibited. And anything synthetically derived is prohibited unless it's specifically allowed. All right? So, for example, you're using things like, one of the fertilizers I use is a fish emulsion, right? Which is, I think, a byproduct from the fishing industry. They take sort of leftover parts and processing things and emulsify it in kind of the worst smoothie that you could imagine. You dilute it in water, you apply it to your crops. Since that's derived from a natural product and has no synthetic products in it, that can be used in an organic process. Things like, for example, Roundup, that's among other problems that is completely synthetically derived. You can get nitrogen that's synthetically derived, like we talked about with the weapons industry, right? The things that make explosives can also make fertilizers, and that's all synthetically derived. You can't use any of those things. All right, so that's certified organic. Now, what we are is certified naturally grown. That follows the certified organic standards pretty much, but the certifying is different. It's more of a peer-to-peer model. It's where other certified naturally grown farmers go on. So like another certified naturally grown farmer will come to my farm, go through that same, there's paperwork I have to keep. I have to show that all of the products I use are approved for organic production. I have to show that all of my seeds have been purchased that are organic if they're available. Right? And so the inspection is more of a collegial atmosphere than it is this top-down thing, which appealed to me. The other reason why we didn't go full certified organic is because really the thing that certifies us is our members and the relationships we have. You're talking about that potato crop that they have to cordon off, right? Like a lot of these big farms, they don't want you there for safety reasons, for health reasons, for whatever reasons. At Blackwood Farms, we're completely transparent. You're welcome to walk the farm. I'll go out there. I'll show you anything at all. Everything is open. You can eat anything directly out of the field. I can pull a carrot out of the ground if you don't mind the grit, and you could eat it right there. So I think it's that relationship we have with people. You can be confident that we're growing food in good ways because you've seen it with your own eyes, right? And so that kind of makes that certified organic less necessary for us. If I were growing, strictly for a wholesale market and I was shipping my food, further away and I didn't have that relationship with my consumers, with the consumer, then that certified organic would be more important to me because it is a reliable seal of approval. If you go into a grocery store, you see that USDA certified organic, that it's not, it's not been used with synthetic products on it. Yes?
Was it said that glyphosate is sprayed on organic potatoes or just
no,
on organic?
It could not be sprayed on organic potatoes. So yeah, no, conventionally grown potatoes have a lot of stuff that are sprayed on them. So. Yes?
What if you are gone? Like, are you guaranteed every week?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. That is one thing. We live in a beautiful state in the summertime, and people like to travel, and you have vacations. The policies differ from farm to farm. Our policy is that really, it's important to make it to that pickup, just because of how the systems are.
But somebody else can do it.
But someone else. So yeah, there are options. I will say that if you don't abuse the privilege and you can't pick up, say, on a Wednesday, you can come to the farm the following day and pick it up. You can do that a couple times. You do it more than a couple times, we'll have a conversation. So you can do that. So we can work with you on that. You're welcome to have someone else pick up. We actually love that. Love exposing other people to the CSA model. One of the ways we get new members. We're in Coopersville, and we do pickups in Grand Rapids. So yeah, and then you should know too that if you're concerned about, am I going to miss some? Am I going to miss too many things? Am I going to miss out too much? That I do when I plan for the CSA, I do calculate, some misses there for you, so that you can miss one or two pickups, and you shouldn't worry about it too.
But your only option is weekly, right? You don't have.
The only option is weekly. Some CSAs do it differently. Some people will do, so we do half, for our small shares, we do half a share every week. Some farms will give you a full share every other week. So they are different. People have put the puzzle together in different ways. Yeah.
If you start out with getting a half a share, can you really like it? Can you get a whole share?
Yeah, we can work with you. Yeah. Absolutely. I've had people do that. I've had people go the other way too.
I was just saying, if your family kind of catches on and they like it, then you can increase it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you say there were two options for pickup? Wednesday evening and Wednesday?
Yeah, and I have all this information up here too. So yeah, we do, our pickups are Wednesday evening in town and Thursday evening on our farm. So, yeah.
So if your schedule to go in the farm, you go in the farm.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
but
if you're not scheduled, just, okay.
if you got to go where you're scheduled, or else my head explodes after a while. All right. Let me share just a couple websites with you. So first one is Local Harvest. It's localharvest.org. /CSA. And Local Harvest is a great aggregator of just different agricultural operations. You can punch in your zip code and it'll list the CSAs in your area. It'll list the farmers markets in your area. It'll list all kinds of different things. So it's a great way to connect with local farmers. And they also have in their little CSA subsection, they have a great explanation of what CSA is and how it goes. Then there's the, I should mention the West Michigan Growers Group, and that website is wmgrowersgroup.org. I'm sorry, I should have emailed these ahead of time and we could have put them up on the board, but we'll do this old school. The West Michigan Growers Group is it's a relatively recent organization. It's all of these small, usually direct to consumer farms in West Michigan. We've gathered together, formed an organization for kind of mutual aid, encouragement, complaining about members. No, we never complain about our members, but complaining about the weather together. So we get together, we have potlucks, we help each other out. And that's also a great place for you to find out about CSAs in the West Michigan area. We'd love to have you join us, but if we don't work for you, there's lots of other different options. And then our website is blackbirdfarms.net. And if you go to our frequently asked questions tab, it'll have, and we have information about community supported agriculture as well, but we kind of try to do a really good job of explaining the CSA model, describing what kinds of things are in the share, and trying to answering everybody's question. So.
Awesome. Yeah,
Any other questions?
I think this topic is really paramount. I also recognize that some of us just don't have the skill set. We didn't grow up with it. A lot of these skill sets are lost by our grandparents, and so we at DBC are trying to ramp up our education process. We've started that years ago with the health coaching, and Don and Jamie have been absolutely phenomenal being our mouthpiece, teaching us how to traverse through this thing called food. And we have individual needs, and individuality is really important because some of us have to do a reset, and so we'll help guide you. You should be focusing on this kind of food and less on that, and just help guide you through the myriad of weird information that's out there. And it is my dream to also restart shopping trips where we show you how to navigate the farmer's market as well as grocery stores, and have a countertop, and here's how you prep a vegetable. All those basic skills, including how to handle knives, kind of an important deal. And so that's all in works. In the meantime, take full advantage of our health coaching. We try to make this happen for you in as easy way as possible. Meet you where you're at, and if you're in a McDonald's crowd, no, we're not going to make you totally vegetable-based right away. It's sometimes a transition. So I want you to not be scared off by any of this. It's a journey. We're all in different chapters of the book of this journey. So embrace where you're at, and let's travel forward. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I may,